Stephen Miller just obliterated CNN yesterday, and while doing so, reset the narrative about ICE agents in Chicago and in other cities around this country and who the real armed insurrectionists are out there. He was brilliant. We're going to show you the highlights, and then we're going to show you how MSNBC reacted to Stephen Miller on CNN and how they're now facing reality that, well, they're the rebels. Like, the Confederates, like the insurrectionists. Also, Caitlin Collins got into it there at the White House, and we're going to give you a little walk down memory lane about who Caitlin Collins is and where she came from, because, well, she should be ashamed of herself on both sides of the equation. We'll show you. We'll explain. It's all coming up right now. We're brought to you by, who are we brought to you by?
Nobody, actually.
We're not brought to you by a damn soul. So if you'd like to be brought to you by somebody, shoot us an email. We'll tell you what it will cost you in the meantime. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. What? I think the show's going really well so far. That was super smooth. Give our channel a subscribe, why don't you, so you don't miss any of our episodes, whether you're watching us live right now and participating in our very lively live chat on your favorite video platform, or if you're watching us after the fact and commenting up the wazoolie down there underneath the player. Give us a subscribe. Make sure you click on the alert so you know whenever we got a new episode coming or a surprise episode coming. And right now, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, let the world know that you're watching something fun, and so they can join you right now and become part of the conversation. We've built a little community here, a fun little family, and we want to keep growing it and growing it and growing it until it takes over the media world or something like that. Dinesh D'Souza has done it again. I've seen this movie. We interviewed Dinesh D'Souza. It's called The Dragon's Prophecy. If you missed the interview, go ahead and watch it. It's listed on the videos page right now on the platform you're watching us. It illuminates a 3,000-year-old mystery about Israel, the dark resurrection, and the end of days. The nation of Israel is a resurrected nation. But what if there was going to be a resurrection of another people, the enemy of Israel? After the horrific attack on October 7th, The Dragon's Prophecy offers new understanding on Israel, radical Islam, anti-Semitism, and biblical prophecy. Could it be that the fate of the world or all of humanity itself is tied to what we're seeing in the Middle East? Based on the #1 international bestseller by Jonathan Cahn, The Dragon's Prophecy reveals how another realm could be transforming our world as we speak. Don't miss Dinesh D'Souza's new movie, The Dragon's Prophecy. Only in theaters on October 8th, tomorrow. Get last-minute tickets at thedragonsprophecyfilm.com, streaming on DVD and Salem Now, starting October 9th. Yesterday, Stephen Miller went on to CNN, and they talked for like 20 minutes, just a marathon interview session. And at the end of the day, well, Stephen Miller was walking off with the heavyweight championship belt, and CNN left on the mat in a bloody pulp. I want to show you the highlights because it would be epic to show you the whole thing. And I'd love to. I would. Seek it out. Find the whole interview. But here is your Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, yesterday, kicking a little ass.
Do you have any idea how much of ICE's workforce and resources have had to be reprioritized? How much of the Joint Terrorism Task Force's resources have had to be reprioritized to fight these domestic terrorists? Do you have any idea how many resources are spent?
You keep
trying
calling
to
them
hunt down and
terrorists, but
track
isn't that hyperbolic to call them terrorists?
What is? If anything, I'm understating the severity of the situation. What issue was more central in 2024 than turning back the border invasion? And since the day we came in, ICE officers have been subjected to a nonstop campaign of physical violence and harassment every single day. And outside the Portland field office in particular, every night, they come, they assemble, they fight, they try to impede movement, they physically attack. For what purpose? Because we had an election, Boris. We had one. What's the purpose? To use actual physical violence to change the result of the election, to say you cannot turn back the border invasion. Do you have any idea how many resources we have had to redesignate to deal with these street terrorists?
Yeah, you said that already. Please stop delivering facts to our viewers. At CNN, we're not used to that. It was beautiful and exquisite. By the way, the question that led up to this, and again, I implore you to watch the whole interview because our show would just be 3 hours long if we broke it down. But the question that Boris Sanchez asked here had to do with deploying federal law enforcement into a city or into a state from DC. And there are only 3 reasons that you can do that. It has to do with armed insurrection, rebellion. But the last one is that if there are criminal elements who are impeding federal officers from doing their job, which obviously that's the case here. But this guy, Boris, said, well, it seems like ICE seems to be doing just fine. They're not being impeded from doing their job. I mean, we've all seen the videos of these people surrounding vehicles, ramming into them, trying to get in the way, becoming human shields, laying down on the pavement. And so that's why Stephen Miller responded.
Any idea how much of ICE's workforce and resources have had to be reprioritized? How much of the Joint Terrorism Task Force's resources have had to be reprioritized?
That's right. So the whole point is, Boris is like, oh, I mean, they don't seem to be impeded. The ICE is going ahead and doing their job. Meanwhile, like over half of their resources are being committed to crowd control and trying to keep these lunatics from getting in the way of these ICE officers actually doing their job. It was a completely disingenuous challenge to Stephen Miller, but it doesn't matter. No matter how disingenuous it is, Stephen Miller chews this guy up and spits him out. Here's a little bit more.
If a Democratic president someday calls the National Guard to a red state over what they see as open rebellion, but is what amounts to a demonstration that gets rowdy. I mean, is that not a fear of yours?
Yeah, see, these are just demonstrations that are getting rowdy, don't you see? That's all. That's all. They're all dressed up in their black hoods, and they got their, bats and their shields and their umbrellas to block security cameras. They got their masks. They're laying down in front of vehicles. They're sending other vehicles in to ram the vehicles. It's just demonstrations that get rowdy. And by the way, this whole thing, oh, you won't like it when Democrats are in charge. We've lived through this junk, okay? The Tea Party movement of 2010 was literally the most peaceful political movement you will ever see. And they still sent federal agents in. They still sent cops in. They still called us racist. They still called us insurrectionists. They said that we were separatists, that we were trying to reform the federal government and keep them from taking all of our money and shoving Obamacare down our throats, which, by the way, is exactly what they did. And that's why we have a government shutdown right now. But that's a whole other story. But this whole idea, what about when a Democrat's in charge and conservatives are just demonstrating and it gets a little rowdy? So here's CNN, the fiery but mostly peaceful CNN, doing the exact same thing that they always do. It's just a demonstration that got rowdy. Miller was ready for it. This is great.
That gets rowdy. I mean, is that not a fear of yours?
They're posting pictures of their kids because it's a demonstration, and they have a sniper on top of a building firing a high-caliber rifle at a nice facility because it's a demonstration, and they are engaging in vehicle ramming.
But the National Guard isn't being sent to Texas.
Because it's a
the National Guard isn't being sent to Dallas, where that sniper was.
Because the Dallas Police Department and the governor of Texas, well, you walked right into that one, have responded to every call for assistance and help. They gave a stand-down order in Chicago, and they gave a stand-down order in Portland. Do you realize that there's 11,000 federal law enforcement officers in Oregon? That's larger than the size of the FBI. Local and state police are resourced to deal with this kind of riotous assembly, but they have refused. They've been given a stand-down order. So
they've arrested some 70 people since June. They've been arresting folks on the ground. They've been arresting folks on the ground. They refute what you're saying outright.
We literally have the 911 audio of the stand-down order in Chicago, and we have documented inside of DHS every single unresponded to 911 call over the recent weeks and months.
This once again proves my point that people who are in the business of delivering news to you don't actually follow the news. When Stephen Miller said that local police are impeding the ability of ICE agents to do their job and standing down when those ICE agents are in danger, you knew exactly what he was talking about. If you watch our program, you would have heard the audio of the police dispatcher in Chicago giving the stand-down order and the graphic image of the leaked screenshot that showed exactly that dispatcher saying the exact same thing that the chief had said. Leave them alone. Don't go anywhere near it. Those cops are, surrounded. They're in trouble, but we're going to just let them be in trouble. Boris there at CNN had no idea what Stephen Miller was talking about because they don't follow the news. They're CNN. And then, of course, I think we're about 10, maybe 11 minutes into this interview. So it was time. obviously, to call Stephen Miller and Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Kristi Noem and all the ICE agents and Border Patrol officers, and ultimately you for supporting them and voting for them, it was time to call you racist. So, all right, go ahead, Boris. Let's hear it.
Is it the case that, as Pritzker frames it, you are profiling brown people, that this immigration crackdown is designed to go after people of color?
It's such a, oh, what a dumb question. The illegal aliens who are here are taking jobs away from blacks. They're taking jobs away from whites. They're taking jobs away from Latinos. They're taking their health benefits away. They're taking their school slots away. And of course, in many cases, they're committing heinous crimes. We cannot have a system of law in this country that privileges illegal aliens over American citizens. And that's what they're doing. You know it, and I know it.
So that's not exactly a no, Stephen. Can you just unequivocally state that the immigration
I said it's a dumb question. Okay.
Well, I appreciate that. But
it's a dumb question.
So no, this policy is not designed.
I thought when I said it was a dumb question, it meant no.
Well, I just want to be clear and precise. I appreciate you trying to qualify my questions, but nevertheless, I think it's a fair one that a lot of people have.
My full answer is no. That is a lie, and it's a dumb question.
It's just a beautiful moment, by the way. As something tells me, Boris doesn't truly appreciate Stephen Miller trying to qualify the question. I could be wrong. Something tells me he doesn't, considering the qualification was how stupid a question it was. Can we just watch? Keep your eye on Stephen Miller's face, by the way, as he jumps in here and says that it's a stupid question.
Is it the case that, as Pritzker frames it, you are profiling brown people, that this immigration crackdown is designed to go after people of color?
It's such a, oh, what a dumb question. The illegal aliens who.
It really is. It really is. You're profiling brown people. Yeah. Who suffers economically the most because of illegal immigration in this country? That would be people of color, who are predominantly the highest rate of victims of rape and pedophilia, child molestation, kidnapping, murder, assault, grand larceny. What class and group of people in this country are predominantly the victims of all of those crimes at the hands of illegal immigrants? That would be other brown people, as he puts it. Oh, by the way, also one other deceitful thing that I hate journalists do is it's not asking a question specifically about, see, if he really wanted information here and he wanted to inform his viewers about what goes into and who gets identified as a potential target for an ICE operation, he would have said, Stephen, could you please lay out the criteria involved in targeting a suspect here? Do you always know who you're going after? Do you have their names? Are they already vetted out and you know that they've been in the country illegally and you know where they are? Or are there other characteristics? Does it have something to do with maybe the way they dress or where they're living or what their location might be, their behavior, or maybe even race? Because we know that proper law enforcement techniques often utilize race as one of the identifying criteria when you're targeting a potential suspect. So could you please inform us of that? But see, that wasn't the question, was it? No, listen again to the question.
Is it the case that, as Pritzker frames it, you are profiling brown people, that this immigration crackdown is designed to go after people of color?
Let me rephrase the question, which basically was just asked by CNN. Isn't the Democrat governor of Illinois who wants to run for president, isn't he right when he says that you people are racist? That's what he just said. That's exactly what he just said. We've also got this clip. This also brings up the Dallas thing. Is this the same clip? If it is, I'll cut it off.
If a Democratic president someday calls the National Guard to a red state over what they see as open rebellion, but is what amounts to a demonstration that gets rowdy.
Yeah, this is a duplicate. So let's move on to this next clip then. Sorry about that. Sometimes that happens. Oh, this was a weird thing. So a couple of minutes into this interview, and I've told you about this before, right outside the White House, you can see the White House in the background there. This is on the north lawn. The south lawn is where the president goes out, where Marine One is there, and he often talks to the media, and he gets into Marine One. That's facing the Ellipse, which faces the Washington Monument and the National Mall and the Thomas Jefferson Memorial beyond. This is on the other side of the building. So the West Wing is right behind Stephen Miller there. If you see that lane there behind him, that's the little walkway that takes you right into the part of the West Wing space, which is where the briefing room is. This is where all the reporters go for their press briefing. The Roosevelt Room is also there behind the press briefing, and then that leads eventually into the Oval Office on the West Wing. All along that lane there, this is right off Pennsylvania Avenue, where Lafayette Square is, where all the BLM demonstrations were, where they were trying to, burn down the White House and climb over the fence to get to Donald Trump. You remember that insurrection the first week of June 2020? And then there's a church right over there. That's where Trump the next day came out and defiantly showed a Bible and said, screw you, you're not going to burn down the church that's been here 200 years across from the White House. Anyway, right along that lane where Stephen Miller is standing, you've got all of these tents. There's like 8 of them. They call it Pebble Beach for some reason. I think because that lane used to be sort of full of gravelly, pebbly kind of pebbles there. And each of the networks, they lease out space in those little green tents so that their reporters can stand up and report live from the White House with that background, right? Or sometimes, like in this case, administration officials will come and they'll do a long interview with the network on their Pebble Beach space. Now, the reason I give you all this background is, first of all, because I work in DC in the media, so I can tell you these things so you're better informed when you see it when you're watching television, but also to explain to you that these things, they're all wired. They're like little mini television studios that have live direct feeds back to the Washington Bureau for whatever network happens to be there, and all the networks have their space there. They're constantly in use. They're constantly, at least during daytime hours, they're constantly connected back to the studio. And there's a constant feed going on with either reporters or administration officials here. Sometimes it's live, sometimes it's taped, but it works like clockwork. It's very rare for there to be a technical problem. This isn't like new technology that they've just discovered. So that's why this was really interesting. In the opening minutes of this interview, when Stephen Miller was obviously full of piss and vinegar, loaded for bear, and starting to really show his stuff against Boris here, watch what happened. Inexplicably, watch what happened.
By the way, you've called the district judge's ruling blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue. We'll try to fix that and get back to you after a quick break. Stay with CNN.
Well, that's kind of weird, isn't it? These feeds work all the time. Listen, there are other feeds that have wonkiness to them and doesn't always, but it's not like this was a new location or something, sort of, no, something happened. All I'm saying is something happened. Someone could have done something. Let me also add another factoid in here that you can just take into account. I'm not saying anything malicious happened. I'm just delivering information to you, but that happened. You just saw it happen. And also, I think it's fair to say that most of the people who work at CNN, production assistants, producers, and the like, they hate Stephen Miller. Right? That's all I'm saying. I wonder if CNN is investigating what happened there. I'd love to know. Meanwhile, you know that Stephen Miller is effective in doing a good job because the most important, prominent, biggest fundraiser and, frankly, spokesperson at this point for what's left of the Democrat Party is focusing directly on Stephen Miller. He has got her attention, and she has had it with him. Of course, I'm talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
When Democrats get desperate, they start hoaxing. We got carpet bombed with hoaxes leading up to the election, and now they're circling back. Senate Minority Leader AOC just debuted the Mini Miller hoax.
Stephen Miller is a clown. I've never seen that guy in real life, but he looks like he's like 4'10", and he looks like he is angry about the fact that he's 4'10".
Primetime measured Miller, he's 5'10", with no shoes on. He told us, quote, "It sounds like AOC needs a new therapist." AOC really shouldn't throw stones. Her fiance's no Prince Charming. Look at him. Legs crossed, Birkenstocks, straws. 3 strikes, you're out. But when we talk about her, AOC says we're just jealous and want to date her. We don't. And maybe her fiance doesn't either, because they've been engaged for over 3 years. Meanwhile, Miller's a stud with a wife and 3 kids. And now AOC fans want her to apologize for body shaming him.
Also, someone said, short kings are great. Absolutely. I'm not here. I want to absolutely make sure that I talk about that. I'm not here to make fun of anyone's anything, but the way people overcompensate over their own stories is what I'm talking about there. So thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, people do overcompensate for their own stories. In fact, someone should introduce her to Hakeem Jeffries. Case in point. But it's good to know that people's physical appearance is fair game now. When we're giving our political commentary, we will now bear that in mind. You buck-toothed beaver. Real fast, though, I just want to make sure I caught something here as we were talking about the video. What was this that Jesse was?
He really shouldn't throw stones. Her fiance's no Prince Charming. Look at him. Legs crossed, Birkenstocks, straws.
What's the straws thing? Is that like a beta thing to drink with straws? I never knew about this. Sometimes I'll use a straw. I bring my own plastic ones. I'm not using the paper garbage. Legs crossed, Birkenstocks, absolutely fair game. Also, let's not forget that he's a ginger, a pasty-skinned freckled ginger, which is, disturbing. Also, one other fact check here for Jesse, and I love Jesse, but real fast.
3 strikes, you're out. But when we talk about her, AOC says we're just jealous and want to date her. We don't. And maybe her fiance doesn't either, because they've been engaged for over 3 years.
No, let me just clarify that. It's true. They've been engaged for like 3 years and they haven't gotten married. But see, there's a reason for that. This way, they can play shell games with the money they make. You see, she can hire him on her political action committee. She can raise all the money. He makes all the money, but they don't have to claim it on their forms because they're not married. You only have to do that with spouses, you see. So this is all part of the grift. It's actually a brilliant move as to why they didn't get married, I suppose. Although if I were him, I'd try to get some kind of contractual agreement so that she can pay alimony at some point for him when it all goes sour. Anyway, Miller was also on Laura Ingraham last night. Instead of just providing a quote about AOC, he actually, he went completely unplugged.
Stephen, AOC is you're her favorite target apparently on Instagram. Check this out.
He looks like he is angry about the fact that he's 4'10", and he looks like he is so mad that he is 4'10", that he's taking that anger out at any other population possible. Like, laugh at them. Laugh at them.
Like, laugh at them. Laugh at them. I wish I had a hoodie on. I mean, are we trying to play sorority sister as elected official? I don't know. I was at a sorority over the weekend over in Texas. I felt like I was back at the sorority house, except they had more sense. Stephen, quick response.
Well, we knew that her brain didn't work. Now we know their eyes don't work. So I mean, she is a mess, right? What a train wreck. What a train wreck.
I think you should just get a hoodie. You should just wear a hoodie from now on and respond to her in a hoodie. It should be hoodie to hoodie. Stephen,
yes,
thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the important point is that every time she's on TV, Republican approval ratings go up, Democrat approval ratings go down. That lady is a walking nightmare.
You're about, I know you for 20 years. You're about 5'10", 11. About 5'10", yes. So 4'10". Yes. I don't know what she can say. All right, Stephen, thank you very much.
There you go. By the way, she's right about the laugh at them part, but that's the advice we should have. I don't know if you noticed how many times during this segment we've seen Stephen Miller look like that and laugh at people who are attacking him and are calling him every name in the book. and trying to mischaracterize who he is and what he stands for and what he said. That's the only real response. Laugh at them. It's why my buddy Andrew Breitbart, when reporting on Antifa, before they were called Antifa at the time, would strap on rollerblades as he was in the midst of them because, well, it's funny. And that's exactly what they deserve. Also, real quick note, since there was a lot of talk about the hoodie there, in D.C. last night, it was like 72, 73 degrees, probably one of the last beautiful nights here before the chills of autumn and winter come in. So I don't know why she was wearing the hoodie other than it was a look. Finally, on Ingram, a little bit before that moment, Miller did make one salient point that we'll pick up on in a few minutes here with regard to Jabba the Hutt Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, and what's really going on in that city right now.
Well, first of all, he uses the term, think about this, he uses the term invasion force. This fool, Governor Pritzker, uses the term invasion force to describe federal law enforcement. He is adopting the language and the narrative of the paid insurrectionists and the Antifa mobs. The invasion force were the 20 million illegal aliens that Biden flooded into this country, taking our jobs, taking our wages, filling up our hospitals, destroying God knows how many schools, and of course leading to countless rapes, assaults, and murders. That was the invasion force. President Trump was elected on a mandate to turn that invasion back, to send those illegals home. And Governor Pritzker is providing aid and comfort to the riotous mob that is physically assaulting, obstructing, impeding, and attacking ICE officers. And his latest act, declaring that there are no-go zones where federal law enforcement is not permitted, is truly an act of insurrection against the federal government.
That is brilliant. That is correct. That is fact-based, especially when you see the videos backing up what Stephen Miller is saying. And that right there is why they can't stand him. That right there is why they hate him. That right there is why they're attacking him. And that right there is why we love Stephen Miller, your deputy chief of staff in the Trump White House. Now, coming up in a quick second, we're going to pick up on where Miller left off there, continue describing exactly what's going on in Chicago right now, and point out exactly who the insurrectionists are. And by the way, I've just taken a quick glance. We're a little short on likes right now. I know you guys are busy. There's a lot going on. But if you're watching right now in our live stream, please give us that thumbs up. Give us the like. It's huge. And watch, we're going to like double the number of people in the chat right now because you're getting lonely. I know you are. Do that for me. Thank you. All right, time for me to be blunt with you. I don't like to pull my punches, and I'm not going to. Gold right now is up about 40% this year. How's that compared to some other investments you might have? I'm not speculating here. That's reality. Look at the numbers. If a portion of your savings isn't diversified into gold, you may be missing the boat. Here's the facts. Inflation still too high. Dollar still too weak. Government debt still increasing. It's why central banks are flocking to gold. They're the ones who are driving up the prices right now to record highs. Listen to me now. It is not too late to buy gold from Birch Gold Group. Get in the door now. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. This is existing money you already have invested. You're not paying a dime out of pocket. Just text my name, Larry, to 989898. Claim your free info kit. There's no obligation. You're just going to get useful information. Gold has historically been used as a safe haven for millennia. What else can say that? Text Larry to 989898 right now. Earn that free info kit on gold. That's Larry, 989898. Protect your future today with Birch Gold. Now, yesterday, we pointed out to you that there was an armed insurrection going on in real time in the city of Chicago. These are armed insurrectionists who are impeding federal law enforcement officers from doing their constitutional legal duty to enforce the laws of the land, in this case, immigration laws. And they're being egged on, they're being supported, they're being promoted, and they're being encouraged by Democrat lawmakers, the mayor of Chicago and the governor of governor of Illinois. After our program yesterday, this narrative absolutely exploded. It took off all afternoon and into the evening on the cable news shows, as it was rightly pointed out that the neo-Confederacy is rising again where it began in the first place, in the ranks of the Democrat Party, as they were claiming that they had some sort of sovereignty from the federal government enforcing federal laws. Let's pick it up where we just left off with Stephen Miller explaining exactly who the rebels are.
Force. President Trump was elected on a mandate to turn that invasion back, to send those illegals home. And Governor Pritzker is providing aid and comfort to the riotous mob that is physically assaulting, obstructing, impeding, and attacking ICE officers. And his latest act, declaring that there are no-go zones where federal law enforcement is not permitted, is truly an act of insurrection against the federal government.
All right. Now, we're going to expand on this narrative and watch how MSNBC reacted to this. They went absolutely nuts. It's almost like when you call people out and you show the world exactly who they are and what they're doing, they get really freaked out and defensive and backed into a corner. Ever happened to you in your life? Yeah, that's exactly what happened in real time on cable news, and it was hilarious. And we had a stunning moment on News Nation from Leland Vittert, of all people. He's hardly a rabble-rousing, scream through the megaphone kind of red-blooded conservative firebrand, but Vittert was awesome last night. We're going to show that to you too. But let's first take you to late afternoon yesterday. Stephen Miller speaking to the media. I told you earlier about Pebble Beach with all those tents where you stand up and talk to the media. There they are. See the green tents I was telling you about? This is probably after his appearance on CNN, and he talked to the assembled media.
Now, 3 months from now, when we're having this conversation in December, what do you see the end game being? Because you clearly don't have trust in some certain local and state law enforcement entities. And so where do you see the National Guard? Where do you see the military going? You suggested that if the courts rule against you, you will find other ways to use the military. That would lead me to believe that there's a conversation about the Insurrection Act that is taking place. What should Americans expect over the next 3.5 years, understanding that there is a real likelihood that those same local law enforcement and state officials will never, ever cooperate with your efforts? Should people expect the National Guard and the military in their streets over the next 3.5 years?
I think that was, so to be clear, you talk about the National Guard in the streets. So right now in Portland, they're talking about having National Guard deployed to secure a federal building in Portland. And so there's a lot of elements to your question, and I'll try to get to all of them. But when I hear comments from Democrat officials saying that this violence from the left is being provoked, their word, by the presence of federal officials, think about how broken of a sentence that is, right? In other words, if tomorrow we went to, say, Dothan, Alabama, and there was a federal building there, and we put 100 police officers in front of it, they wouldn't be attacked. Nobody would throw rocks at them. Nobody would try to shoot them. Nobody would do anything. They would say, hello, good morning. Maybe they get them a cup of coffee before they go out for the shift for the day. They'd ask, how are your kids doing? How are your kids doing? The fact that Democrats think that their own base cannot contain their desire to inflict violence upon the mere sight. In other words, National Guard's not being sent there proactively. They're being sent there reactively to defend ICE officers under siege. So in theory, if ICE officers were in the building and the National Guard was in the building and nobody was violently attacking them, the only thing that you would see is there's a building, there's ICE officers, there's guardsmen. The violence is entirely rioters choosing to show up and wage violence at a specific federal building. They've handed out flyers. I saw one at Deep Flyer recently, and it said, we need to mobilize around the Broadview facilities, this is in Chicago, to shut down ICE. So what does that mean? When they say we're going to mobilize to shut down ICE, what are they saying? They're saying they're going to carry out insurrection against the federal government by using force, obstructive force, to keep ICE officers from going out and conducting arrests. Would we ever tolerate this with any other law enforcement agency? If we said shut down the FBI and say, let's pick one of the organizations that the media might understand better. So let's say the Proud Boys said we're going to shut down the FBI, and they went and they formed a human obstructive wall in front of the entry and exit to the Washington field office of the FBI, and they attacked anybody coming and going. How many nights do you think that situation would persist for? Not even one, let alone over 100. We all understand this to be true. In other words, if you can't see that since we've taken office, there has been a organized, systematized campaign to delegitimize, dehumanize, threaten, impede, obstruct, and physically assault ICE officers in the conduct of their duties, then I can't persuade you of it because you're choosing not to see what's right in front of your face.
Absolutely, incredibly brilliant. The logic in this answer and the facts in this answer are unassailable. And it's like he takes a scalpel to the left and their histrionics and their broad brush rhetoric and all the crap that they say at a press conference or at a media hit that never gets pushed back on from the teleprompter reader who's sitting on the other side of the desk with them, like J.B. Pritzker or Gavin Newsom, whoever. And he just says, well, but think about what you're saying here. Think about who the real problem is. And let me just be clear, because you heard me use the word earlier, neo-Confederacy. That's who these lefties are acting like. The Democrat governor of Illinois, the Democrat governor of California, the Democrat governor of New York, of Michigan, the Democrats in Washington, D.C., who are egging on this behavior from these anti-ICE protesters, these Antifa types, who are creating human walls and human shields protecting criminals from ICE law enforcement, federal officers of carrying out their duty. This is not new. This is not new. This goes back many, many, many decades, even more than a century in the United States of America. And it all comes back to the Democrat Party, too. The Democrats would put on their gray uniforms and say, well, looky here now. You may not like our little peculiar institution that we have here in our state. You folks up there in Massachusetts, you just mind your own business. And don't you send down any troops from Washington, D.C. to tell us what we can do with the people who work in this state. You send your troops down here and you're going to see some trouble. Stay away from Fort Sumter. We got this handled here. And if you don't like the allusion to the 19th century war between the states, well, let's go into the 20th century, because it was the same folks, the descendants of those Confederates, who were saying, well, now you may not like the fact that we have blacks only and whites only fountains here, but that's our business in our state. You may not like the fact that we have separate but equal schools here, and people of a certain color go to their schools while people of my color get to stay in my school. But that's our business. Washington, D.C. has no say in this matter. Well, actually, they do. There's a supremacy clause in the United States Constitution. We have passed laws. There are certain things that the federal government exclusively has a say in, and immigration control and border security happen to be two of those things. This is literally none of the state of Illinois' business. This is literally none of the city of Chicago's business. This is exclusively the federal government's business. But here we go again. They may have different accents there in Illinois, but I assure you, they are neo-Confederates who were standing there in the schoolroom doors saying, you get these federal troops out of here. We have our own business here. You may not like the fact that we exploit cheap labor from the third world who are here in this country illegally, taking jobs and resources from American citizens, but that's our business. You have nothing to say about it. That's exactly what's going on here. But the difference is they're coming with guns. That's what happened in Chicago over the weekend. They're coming with violence. Actually, now that I think about it, it's not that different, is it? It's just the same old story. Stephen Miller calling it out for what it is just now absolutely made MSNBC go into an intellectual doom spiral. They could not handle it. He occupies every inch of their heads. And I've got plenty of examples. Watch.
Oregon Attorney General's lawyer last night was explaining, we filed a TRO to prevent deployment of the Oregon National Guard. They went another way and called in the California National Guard. We then came back to you with California asking to stop that deployment. And then we learned that they were calling in the Texas National Guard. So I think they are preparing for the pivoting of the Trump administration to another source of legal authority, not just turning to other National Guards. But now, if they are going to be thwarted in any effort to invoke Title X to deploy any National Guard, what other legal authorities are at their disposal? Well, we understand that the White House is floating the idea of the Insurrection Act, that Stephen Miller had a conversation with CNN today in which he sort of suggested that that may be a next avenue. In a conversation with our own Vaughn Hilliard today, he did not dispute that that was an avenue that they are considering going down.
So I wonder, because he's talking about how he believes that these federal law enforcement officers might have broken the law in this raid specifically, and that he's going to use the full weight of the state to try to prosecute them if they have. Could they get into a scenario where Governor Pritzker tries to order state law enforcement officers to arrest federal law enforcement officers if they see them, in their estimation, breaking the law? I mean, that gets into a really, I don't know, is that possible? I mean, we'll find out. I think that he's going to be asked that during this news conference. But what would that be like?
It would be horrible, because I think that the showdown between different forms of law enforcement.
Yeah, it would be horrible, all right. It would be horrible because she knows that it would be completely unconstitutional, outrageous, and actually raise the specter of a civil war. I mean, even George Wallace didn't call his local state or sheriff's offices to stop the National Guard from making sure that Black students can go into an integrated school post Brown versus Board of Education. Will Pritzker go that extra mile? The fact that it's even a discussion on MSNBC is remarkable and telling. Now, that was the intellectual conversation on MSNBC. This show, boy, what a absolute pile of garbage this show has turned out to be. Joy Reid's show actually had some credibility to it compared to this thing. Watch how this conversation ensued.
At the same time,
what Michael is referencing is that I was so struck by some of what Stephen Miller said today and the way in which you can see them beginning to layer their lies, right? That there is a lie that they have told about immigration as a form of terrorism. That was their justification for using Alien Enemies Act, even though that has been struck down by courts. The lie that there is a left-wing cabal that is acting as terrorists. And now this lie that somehow showing up and protesting or expressing dissent is un-American and equivalent, if you have a judge stand beside you in affirming your right, quote, legal insurrection, right? That you can see that they have laid the groundwork, and then they lay more and they lay more. And then you get to the point where you're like, well, which part of this do I debate with you? Do I debate the part where I tell you that's not why immigrants are coming to this country? Do I debate the part with you where I say that there's not actually a left-wing mob that is trying to take over this country through illegal terroristic activities? Or do I argue with you the fact that when you have a duly appointed judge who says you're just not following the law, dude, that is not in fact an insurrection?
Yes. Judicial review is not the same thing as legal insurrection.
Okay, so first of all, nobody's calling what the judge did legal insurrection that I'm aware of, number one, although you can find one federal judge to claim that they can overturn the actions of the executive branch, knowing full well that the Supreme Court has already rejected those ideas and actually admonished federal judges to stop with these temporary restraining orders to stop the executive branch from carrying out their constitutional duty. And if a judge continues to insist on trying to do that, I don't know what other words you use other than legal insurrection, number one. But when we're using the term of the insurrection in Chicago right now, we're talking about the paid-for protesters who were going out organized, trying to actually stop law enforcement from doing their job. But do you hear the desperate cry of despair in their voices as they realize that they don't have the law on their side, that they have been losing left and right, and they can't stop this from happening? They know that, by the way, but they're continuing to inform their audience that in some way Trump is the one, Stephen Miller is the one who is violating the Constitution, and yet they can't point to one moment at any time during the last 10 months since Trump was sworn in that he has defied a court order. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's their guy, Joe Biden, who bragged about ignoring the Supreme Court. Remember? I do. It got so bad on MSNBC that they had to call up this guy. Have you noticed how they bring this guy onto the air all the time? Is he a congressman? No. Is he a senator? Nah. Is he a governor? Nope. A mayor? Nope. This guy is a state legislator representing a little district in Tennessee. But they know when they bring him on that he's going to say something racially divisive and outrageous. And so, of course, he's got an open invitation. Also, forgive me, but, since AOC has now given us all permission to make fun of each other's appearance, is it me or is this a character from a Dave Chappelle skit? Right? If you're listening on the audio-only podcast, the guy's name is State Representative Justin Pearson of Tennessee. Go ahead and do a search on the image, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, the Dave Chappelle character delivered.
Particularly cities with Black leadership. Stephen Miller is a known white nationalist and supports white supremacist ideology. And so the fact that our city is going to be targeted, that my constituents and people who I care for.
There you go. That's what we needed. See, the producers at MSNBC, maybe even the executives in the C-suite, they're like, hey, we've been watching the coverage today of Stephen Miller and Trump and ICE and Pritzker and Chicago. You guys haven't called him a white nationalist enough. You haven't said that this is all about targeting people of color. Can you get what's wrong, man? We've got a quota here and you haven't hit your mark. Yeah, get that guy in Tennessee on. He'll call him a white nationalist. I would love for Miller to start suing these people, but he's got too much else going on right now. He's kind of busy. All right, that turns us to News Nation, which has set itself up as sort of not conservative, not liberal. They got hosts of all different colors, but they're really trying to have a little bit more of a serious conversation. Leland Vittert, a great guy and a good newsman. He's been coming into his own lately in making sure that he doesn't allow people to come on and spew bullshit. And watch this moment when that's exactly what this guest tried to do.
Why do you think that somebody protesting ICE has any more rights than anybody else? If I go stand in front of the FBI office and try to block an FBI agent from leaving, I get arrested. It's pretty simple. Why should those rules not apply to you?
I don't think any of us have more rights than anyone else, but I think we have rights. I think we have the First Amendment, which I thought conservatives liked, but I guess not. Honestly, the reason I'm on this show is to let people know, let people that are watching your show, what is happening. I am a 5 foot tall, 110-pound woman who has been thrown by ICE 3 separate times, just existing. One of which I was trying to help someone not get run over by a car.
You weren't just existing. You weren't just existing. You were trying. You weren't just existing. You were trying. You were trying to block. You were trying to block federal agents or assist those who are.
I was trying to keep someone from getting
maybe if the person wasn't standing in front of, maybe if the person wasn't standing in front of federal agents, that wouldn't be a problem.
Look, you can talk over me all you want, but I want people to know this is what's happening on the ground, and you have rights.
What's
and I
happening?
Know that things that
I'm
we're
still
being
confused.
tear gassed, that people are being taken from their homes. ICE agents repelled from Black Hawk helicopters and arrested naked children in the middle of the night.
No, they didn't. That's been completely debunked. That's been completely debunked.
Literally has not. I have watched.
No, it really has. It's complete lies. And all they've got is lies. That's all they can tell you right now is lie after lie after lie. And I love that while she's saying that she's trying to exercise her First Amendment rights, look at the scene on camera here. I'll let it play without the audio. I thought conservatives liked the First Amendment. Here I am just exercising my First Amendment rights. Yeah, I don't know. It looks like it's something more is going on there than just delivering a speech, posting something on social media, writing an article. That's my First Amendment right to stand in the way of law enforcement and rough them up and impede federal agents from performing their legal and constitutional duty. You know that we're on the right side of this issue. You know where this is headed. And that's why I said yesterday, the showdown in Chicago is, in fact, an armed insurrection against federal law enforcement officers. Listen, I love the fact that Democrats are now suddenly loving the 10th Amendment and they're championing states' rights. It's actually hilarious. And by the way, I love the 10th Amendment too, and I believe that there are states' rights. This happens to not be one of them. A state does not have the right to dictate their own federal immigration policy. Obviously. Duh. And yet that's exactly what's happening. And somehow all the money that goes into the political action committees and the campaigns for those Democrats so that they can get elected to office and ignore the law, well, I think as investigations continue, we might find that a lot of that money, when it's not going to Democrats, are going to groups who are then organizing on the street and starting these fights with the cops. And I don't know, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty familiar with history. The people who are on the streets trying to fight with federal law enforcement officers doing their job, they end up being on the wrong side of history. Caitlin Collins was representing CNN yesterday in the White House briefing against Caroline Levitt, and I don't mean to make it sound like it's a Caitlin versus Caroline situation, like the two of them are going at it, but, well, that's exactly what happened here, and it didn't end well for Caitlin Collins. How does she keep her job in prime time at CNN? I'm worth some speculation, but before we go there, watch Caroline take care of business yesterday.
A federal judge over the weekend that the president had appointed to the bench in his first term in office basically argued that he could not deploy other states' National Guards to Portland, basically said that it was untethered, his argument, to what is actually happening on the ground. Which local officials in Portland have said that the National Guard is needed there?
With all due respect to that judge, I think her opinion is untethered in reality and in the law. The president is using his authority as commander-in-chief, U.S. Code 12406, which clearly states that the president has the right to call up the National Guard in cases where he deems it's appropriate. And if you look at what has happened in Portland, Oregon, for more than 100 nights, I was talking to our law enforcement team about it this morning, for more than 100 days, night after night after night, the ICE facility has been really under siege by these anarchists outside. They have been disrespecting law enforcement. They've been inciting violence. We saw, again, a guillotine rolled out in front of this federal building. And so the president wants to ensure that our federal buildings and our assets are protected. And that's exactly what he's trying to do. And ultimately, in the case in Los Angeles, that judge ruled in the Ninth Circuit that panel of judges ruled that those troops could remain and that the president was well within his authority to do so. So we are appealing that decision. As you know, we expect a hearing on it pretty quickly. And we're very confident in the president's legal authority to do this. And we're very confident we will win on the merits of the law.
All right. A couple of things here that I want to point out. First of all, choose your fighter. I'd love to know right now, if you're going to war, any kind of war of words, actual hand-to-hand combat, firearms even, if necessary, maybe a fashion war. You tell me which one you're picking, left or right here. Caroline or Caitlin. I know who I'm picking. That's point number one. Number two, not to be gratuitously nasty, but I think there's a reason why Caitlin Collins on her CNN show is always looking straight at the camera instead of in profile. Just saying. And finally, the basis of that question was so ridiculous. And if she was an informed reporter in the White House briefing room, she wouldn't have even picked this fight with Caroline, because you all know, because you watch this program every single day, that when a single judge comes out and says, oh, no, you can't do this, you can't have federal troops here. Well, if you watch every day, you know that a judge said the same thing about the troops in Los Angeles and in California and the National Guard. And the fact is the National Guard troops were called in to protect federal buildings in Los Angeles and protect federal officers carrying out their federal duties. And that's exactly what's going on in Portland right now. And sure, they found themselves a judge. Well, it was a Trump-appointed judge. So what? It doesn't matter who appointed the judge. Yeah, have you noticed that whenever it's an Obama or Biden-appointed judge that is at odds with President Trump, they never point out that it's an Obama or Biden-appointed judge? I mean, if it's relevant that this is a Trump-appointed judge, why is it not equally relevant when it's an Obama or Biden-appointed judge? But it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. A judge is wrong, and the judge will be overturned. This has already been overturned at the appeals. And by the way, again, if she were an informed reporter, she would know that it's the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the exact same appeals court and panel that has already overturned the previous judge's decision down in Los Angeles. So if you have all of that information already in your head and you know those things, then the only reason why you're positing this question to Caroline Levitt is to create a fight. to create a moment, which is what she got. Or you don't have those thoughts in your head and you don't have the facts at issue. And if that's the case, well, you deserve exactly what you get. So go ahead. Go ahead, Caitlin. Try your best.
No local officials that you can point to that have said we need the National Guard? Because I spoke to the police chief of Portland last week. He said that the president's claims just don't match up with what's happening on the ground.
I would encourage you as a reporter to go on the ground and to take a look at it for yourself, because there's been many members of the press, not press in this room, but independent journalists, some of whom we'll be inviting to the White House very soon to share their stories, because they have been in the middle of these riots and they have witnessed the anarchy that is taking place night after night. It's on video. You should play it on your show. You have a great opportunity on prime time on CNN to show your audience. Yeah, but you're probably talking to partisan Democrat officials who are opposed to everything this president does. You should also ask the people who live in Portland. We've actually heard from many members of the community who have said that this is complete civil disobedience. It's a mess. It's been loud. It's been troubling for neighbors in the community who are just trying to live peacefully. And these people are not there to peacefully protest. They are there to cause mayhem and havoc.
That's right. She's so good. And Caitlin is just completely disingenuous. And by the way, anybody that you see on television news right now is saying, well, it's the Portland police chief. He's not partisan. He's just a career law enforcement officer. If they're saying that, they are completely ignorant to how city police departments operate and how police chiefs get their job. Who hires a police chief? The mayor and the city council. Okay. So who's the mayor and the city council in Portland? I rest my case. Even more so, who continues to discipline and give marching orders to and rules of engagement to the police chief on a regular basis? Who does the police chief answer to? Same answer. This is why you often see in certain jurisdictions, like Los Angeles County, for example, you see one very distinct perspective and approach to law enforcement from the chief of police in Los Angeles compared to the sheriff of Los Angeles County. See, who hires the sheriff of Los Angeles County? We do. The people do. Who does the sheriff of Los Angeles County answer to? The elected officials on the Board of County Supervisors? No, he answers to us. And that's why you often see a very, very different approach from your county sheriff versus your city police department. And the fact that Caitlin Collins either doesn't know that or pretends not to know that sort of blows away her credibility as a journalist. Sort of. But you know what? It's not good enough. Let's do a little extra digging to blow away any kind of journalistic credibility Caitlin Collins has. Let's start with a recent appearance she had on a podcast where she's kicking back really cash, isn't she? I do love it when the teleprompter readers do this. It's best when Jake Tapper does it. Look at me, I'm Jake, man. Let's shoot the shit. Just gonna chill out here on your sofa and have a podcast convo. Buy my book. So Caitlin starts to speak candidly about the Trump White House and how they treat the media.
It's different because Trump is such an accessible president that, like, if he's just swearing in the ambassador to Greece, like, typically that wouldn't be a newsworthy event if President Biden or any typical president was probably doing it. But Trump's moments, anytime the camera's around and the reporters are around, it can turn into a press conference. And so you never go into the Oval thinking, oh, this is going to be a quick, we call them sprays. It's where you go in, basically a photo op, and then you leave. Because Trump will swear someone in and then he'll turn to you and say, you know, any questions? And he'll take maybe questions for 45 minutes. And so you have to, like, I always keep a running list of questions on my phone. Okay. Because you never know when you're going to run into him.
All right. So real fast, and I hate to be that guy, but I just want you to be smarter than Caitlin Collins. And this is nitpicking, I suppose, but she should know better, especially since she's bragging about the fact that she's in the Oval when these things happen. But just so you know, the president of the United States never swears anybody in. Have you noticed that? It's a constitutional thing. It's a protocol thing. The president himself does not swear anyone in. Doesn't swear in any members of his cabinet. He doesn't swear in ambassadors. He doesn't. He presides over it. He's standing there, but somebody else is always doing the swearing in. So why did she make such a stupid mistake on something? Right? Why did she have to? I mean, again, I'm sorry for being that guy, but it's little things like that. Like if they lie and exaggerate and overstate or get wrong, the little things that she just herself admitted that she witnesses, then what else are they lying, overstating, exaggerating, or getting wrong? All right, but that said, she goes on to talk about the truth of the matter, which is despite what the reporters on the ground are saying on a regular basis, Trump is actually the greatest president to report on that you can ever imagine. They'll just never say it. And think to yourself why Caitlyn might say something like this in this easygoing, laid-back podcast, but she'll never say it while sitting on set, on camera, in prime time, on CNN.
When he's going to start taking questions. And so you can't just have one or two. Like you have to have like 10 ready to go.
Because you said the word typical president, right? Not your typical president. Typical president was swearing in someone from Greece, like we would know. Is that because of predictability?
So Trump is my first president that I ever covered, and I covered Biden as well. And so I can compare it to him. But even with President Obama, there are these moments in the Oval Office that everyone has come to know because you see them on TV so often.
Right.
But when you speak to reporters who covered President Obama, he almost never responded to shouted questions. It wasn't his thing. He didn't, he would have his moments with world leaders, and then you would leave the Oval. Trump kind of upended that when he came into the White House. And sometimes presidents are press averse. Trump embraced the media. I mean, he did it for decades as like this New York mogul.
Sure.
And so he just had a different approach to the press and always has, long before taking office. Most politicians are not very press savvy. It kind of depends on who it is. I think Trump always understood the value of a camera and a mic.
Okay. A little bit more from this podcast, but I just want to also just give you a heads up where she says, this is the first president she ever covered having a press pass at the White House, to be specific and exact. But she did cover the Obama White House when she was a cub reporter there for the Daily Caller. We're going to show you how she covered the Obama White House back in the day, coming up in just a second. But a little bit more from this podcast, specifically about Donald Trump and how he is as president as she covers him.
I don't sleep much.
Not really.
And nor does
President
Trump. No, I know. I slept 4 hours last night.
And you feel fine? Okay, that's
I'm on this is my fourth cup of coffee.
4 hours is nuts. 4 hours is Trump level.
4 hours. Yeah. And the night before was like 6, before that was like 7. So it varies. But is that what he sleeps, like 4 hours?
He does not sleep.
Yeah, I did Fox and Friends finance segment, and it was just on Gen Zs and finance. And one of the executive producers we just want to show you around, and they showed me the control room. And I said, how have things been in the control room as of late? She's like, none of us are sleeping because the president doesn't sleep. We're all working 2 times right now. Do you feel that's way?
I was just talking to someone about this because we wrote this story on what traveling with him is like in the first term, because I had this source who said, you never want to be on Air Force One on a trip. And I said, why? You'd think you want to be in the axis of power close to Trump. He doesn't sleep on these trips. And you're going to Asia or something, and that's kind of the only time you're going to sleep before you go on this trip.
Yeah.
But Trump is just always up and talking, and he'll have them go wake staff up if they're asleep because he wants to talk to them.
Huh.
And so we have this big trip to Asia coming up, and you're not going to sleep on that flight.
You don't sleep much.
Okay. It's interesting that she's now whining about the fact that the reporters can't get any sleep because Trump doesn't get any sleep. And that's rough. It's really, my heart breaks for them. The good news is, though, Caitlyn and all of your colleagues there, you had 4 years to rest up when Biden was in the White House. God knows you got plenty of sleep then. And it's a good thing, too, because, when he was president, there was really nothing to report on. It was so boring, nothing going on at all. These people are the worst. But as I mentioned, we want to just delve into the history of Caitlyn Collins and how she got here from there. And what's most important is what there is, where there is, what there was for her. Meaning she started somewhere. You just heard me mention it a minute ago. She worked for the Daily Caller. That was her first job in journalism. Yes, that's right. The right-wing conservative website and media platform created by none other than Tucker Carlson. Here's a little Wayback Machine moment. Here's Caitlin Collins on Fox and Friends when she was carrying the banner of the Daily Caller. What do you think she wanted to talk about back then?
From our nation's capital. Caitlin, what does that mean? What's George Soros trying to do with the immigration crisis?
Good morning. Okay, so George Soros is this foreign-born left-wing guy who essentially wants to change the nature of our country. And in this data dump, one of the memos was about the refugee crisis. And they made 3 points. They think that they've been successful at influencing immigration policy across the world. They think that the refugee crisis is an opportunity to continue doing so. And they think the refugee crisis is the new normal. And George Soros is this guy who is a staunch advocate for open borders. He wants people to be able to go wherever they want, whenever they want, for whatever reason. And for him, he sees this immigration policy, this crisis, as a vehicle to further his immigration agenda.
Wow. I mean, now, I don't know who that woman is, but she'd be a great guest on CNN primetime as they talk about the immigration crisis in this country. Yeah, if a guest came on Caitlin Collins' show tonight on CNN and said, you know, the root of this whole immigration crisis in America is really this evil, maniacal, multi-billionaire globalist named George Soros, who is funding a fake refugee crisis to tear down America's borders and undermine our infrastructure from within. Caitlin Collins would kick that person out of studio. But in this case, it's actually Caitlin Collins saying it. Was she wrong then? Or is she wrong now? Was she lying then? Is she lying now? I mean, it's worth asking. But that's not the end of Caitlin Collins' journalistic journey to where she is now, picking insincere fights with Caroline Levitt in the briefing room. No, let me show you one of our favorite stories she wrote up when she was at the Daily Caller. Check out this headline. It's a slideshow, you know, like a listicle to get traffic to the website. Top 10 hottest blacks. Now, I want you to know, I give you my word. This was a Caitlin Collins story, and this was a Caitlin Collins byline. But somehow, inexplicably, Caitlin Collins' byline does not appear on this URL anymore. And I think we know why. Look, over at the New York Post, they actually wrote it up a couple of years ago. Caitlin Collins' missing Daily Caller bylines are restored, but the mystery remains. Keith Kelly wrote it up. It's a whole story about how after Caitlin Collins got the gig at CNN, suddenly a lot of her stories just disappeared, or at least her name on the stories disappeared. Neil Patel, who is Tucker Carlson's partner over at Daily Caller and now runs the place, he assured the New York Post at the time that they were restoring her byline where it belongs and wasn't sure why suddenly it disappeared from the archives. But now it seems to be missing. At least it's missing from the top 10 hottest blacks slideshow that Caitlin put together. Thankfully, before the disappearing act, a lot of people grabbed some of the screenshots of Caitlin Collins' work over there at the Daily Caller pre-CNN. Here's one of them. The internet wonders, are the Obama girls' skirts too short? See, I told you she covered the Obama White House. Also from Caitlin Collins, DIY, how to glare like Michelle Obama. The First Lady is known for her unwavering death stare, and its icy intensity will surely go down in history. The look could make Tex Watson shudder, and at times makes us wonder if the president needs Secret Service from his own wife. That's the hard-hitting journalism Caitlin Collins engaged in before CNN saw a rising star in the making. Oh, we're just getting started. Caitlin Collins also had this one, because she covered Trump too. 9 stunning photos of Melania Trump on Donald Trump's birthday. This is before President Trump was elected president and was in the middle of the campaign, June of 2016. Caitlin Collins was then the White House correspondent. And we love seeing pictures of Melania Trump, stunning ones to be sure. But this was serious journalist Caitlin Collins at the time. Here's another one, maybe my favorite. Ice Bucket. Remember the Ice Bucket Challenge, guys? That was some good stuff. Ice Bucket Challenge hipsters, these Guantanamo detainees did it first. I think this is a reference to waterboarding. Get it? Gitmo detainees got waterboarded in the War on Terror, and that was just like the Ice Bucket Challenge. Get it? Now, I want you to know that I'm not one to throw stones in glass houses. I've been doing this for a little bit longer than Caitlin Collins, between this streaming show or my podcast or my radio career or the origins, writing for Breitbart, starting in January of 2009. But I got to tell you, you're not going to find headlines like this with my byline on it. I shudder to think of what you might find, but you're not going to find anything like that. All right, our last one of Caitlin Collins, and then we'll call it a day. This really is the best one. Do you remember the Syrian refugee crisis where some states didn't want to have Syrian refugees brought into the country? It was 2013, I think. And when Obama drew the red line and then decided to just ignore it and let the quasi-genocide take place of Syrians, and then there were refugees, and we were going to relocate them into this country. It was like 12 years ago. Caitlin Collins decided to use the strength of her byline at the Daily Caller to chime in on the Syrian refugee crisis because states refused to take them. Here's what she wrote. 13 Syrian refugees we'd take immediately, with photos. You see, Caitlin decided to find super hot, barely clothed Syrian women and put together a slideshow with her byline on it. While a growing list of governors are claiming they won't allow Syrian refugees to enter their states, we think these women might make them change their minds. They're seriously hot. Can you see that? Seriously hot. Like Syria hyphen Slee. And that's the woman who is now trying to go toe-to-toe with our White House press secretary and trying to call out Donald Trump for all of the atrocities of the Trump administration. That woman who took the Syrian refugee crisis and turned it into a softcore porn listicle for the Daily Caller. Never take a back seat to these people when it comes to morality, any sort of ethics, any level of judgment that they try to inflict upon you because of your political positions. Consider the source. Caitlin Collins. Seriously. All right. Thank you for watching the show today. We appreciate it. That was fun. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, like our video, and come back for more. If you liked any of our individual segments today, Kevin will be chopping them up, slicing and dicing, and putting them back out there as standalone video segments. Come on back and watch them and like those too. That's how you can help our channel, and we really do appreciate it. You can also help our channel with super chats. Let's get right to them. Do we have some? Oh, we do. We have a good chunk of them. Loco Valdez, a.k.a. Richard McCarthy, with a $10 super chat. Another day to do better and to do some good. Hallelujah. God bless you. That's a great message, and I appreciate it, especially on October 7th. Thank you, Loco Valdez. Ball State alum with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Jeff. Hey, AOC, I didn't know Prada made hoodies. Do you think that was a Prada hoodie? Yeah, she's rolling in dough, so I doubt she got a Walmart job there. Thank you, Ball State. Elliot Berry with a $5 super chat. Larry, how do you see the brutal Chicago winter affecting the Thunderdome mooks of Antifa in a few months? Maybe George Soros will offer hazard pay. Yeah, I mean, listen, they're going to just have to start setting fires, right? That's what they do. They're going to start burning crap down. Yeah, I don't think this is going to last much longer. I'll be honest with you. I think that we'll get some court rulings here pretty soon, and there's going to be a major stand down. It just doesn't work in favor of the local politicians and local law enforcement when there is a when they're trying to square off against federal officers. The feds always win. They've got constitutional supremacy in this case. Susan Shellett with a €6 super chat. Left, communist, anarchist, tribalist, right, individualist, and the lower 33% of the Ash experiment. Oh, nice draw. That's all one needs to know. That is, in fact, all one needs to know. Thank you, Susan. Oh, and a €6 super chat from Susan. Antifa over here is giving seminars on how to break the law. No doubt they're doing it over there as well. Absolutely they are. They're organized. They literally have a playbook that they play off of, written by a dude who has now fled the country, calling for illegal armed insurrection in this country, and we're seeing it play out. It's not going to end well, but it does remind me of my buddy Kurt Schlichter's books, actually. His books are becoming prophetic. Thank you, Susan, for that €6 super chat. God's best friend in jolly old England with a £2 super chat. ICE is committing a genocide against Mexico. I think he's being sarcastic there. God's best friend with a £2 super chat. Manchester police committing genocide against Jews. Yeah. Actually, what has the fallout been out of Manchester, by the way, with that terror attack? I haven't seen the latest. Thank you for that, God's best friend. Patrick with a £5 super chat. Is Patrick one of our Birminghamers? No, those are called Brummies, aren't they? Is someone from Birmingham a Brummie? I think they are. Patrick, if the rioters are fighting to save the country, democracy, and the Constitution, how come none ever carry the United States flag while doing so? Thank you. Thank you. That is a great point. Damn it. I love it when the Brits make better points than me. God's best friend with the £2 super chat. It's the Swedish refugee crisis. Yeah. Oh my God. That would be great. Like the Syrians, but it would be the Swedish bikini team. Do you, are you familiar with the Swedish bikini team, Kevin?
No.
It was back in the good old days when beer companies sold beer by showing beautiful women wearing bikinis instead of trans dudes. But I think it was Bud Light, actually, ironically, who had the no, it wasn't. It was Old Milwaukee. Old Milwaukee beer
I
had a
know
whole
Old
thing
Milwaukee.
about you know Old Milwaukee beer?
Yeah, my dad said he used to call it Old Swill because it tasted so bad.
It's not a great beer, but they had a whole thing with the Swedish bikini team, and it was beautiful women they all looked exactly alike with a straight blonde hair cut right here. I think they may have been wigs, wearing exactly what you would imagine, wearing bikinis. Google it. It's a nice little look into the archive of my youth. Thank you very much. I think that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share our videos, and catch our show tomorrow. Same time, same place. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.